All right, so welcome back to lesson number 2, and today we're going to talk about 3 things: how to link in Revit, how to link in CAD drawings, and how to set up Keynotes. So I picked these 3 topics because they all reference like external files, and I figured they'd be good together. All right, so we're going to start off looking at the project folder. Generally, a company will have all their disciplines, their CAD files, their Keynotes, all located within a project drawing folder. So I kind of replicated that here with a sample project. You can see that folders up here, this will have like a CAD file. So that's my example CAD file. We'll have Keynotes. This is a blank document that I'll show you how to set up. And then over here, you'll see the Revit temporary files. You generally don't touch these. And then these are the actual Revit projects. So how this works is that each project will link in the other projects as an overlay. So you can see like the background from the architect with the mechanical equipment and like the plumbing piping running through there. But when somebody takes your project and links it into theirs, all those overlaid links won't follow through. That way you don't get like a circular loop. Okay, so we're gonna hop right into the electrical model to set it up because, you know, this is the electrical department. If you need a refresher on how to open the Revit model, I'll throw a card somewhere you can click on. Remember, don't double click on it inside of the folder. You want to open up Revit first and then open the project from there. When you open the file, you generally are landing on a floor plan of some sorts, but if you don't have a floor plan, you can always go up here to view, and under floor plans you can make one. So if you click on that, uncheck do not duplicate views, and then you'll see all the available levels that you can make a floor plan from. So I already have level 1 created, so I'm not going to make another one, but here we are. So to link in a Revit file, you're going to go up here to Insert, click on Revit Links, and then it'll navigate you to the project folder. From here, I always start with the architect because it's good to know the building first and then have everything else line up to it. So we're going to click on Architect, and then down here under Positioning, it's best to always leave it at internal origin to internal origin, unless like the person that set up the architect plan specifies that they use the manual base point or something. 95% of the time I've never had to mess with it. It's always internal origin, internal origin. That way all the disciplines come in at the same point. I had one project where they wanted to render it at a specific point in I don't know, Google Earth or something, and it was a complicated process, so best not to mess with that. So click on, or leave it at internal origin to internal origin, and then you can click open, or you can click on this little arrow next to it to open the work set specification dialog. So we're gonna go ahead and just, you know, show that what it does and why you would want to do that. So click open. Oh crap. I forgot to mention something first. We're gonna hit cancel. So over here, before you link in a Revit model, it's important to put it on the correct work set. The links can be classified into different work sets so that you can turn off different links and different views if you wanted to. However, for me, I always put it under Revit links. So we created this work set here. Yeah, I'll run you through this real quick. So you can go to new, we'll say new Revit links, and this is always set visible in all views because I want every view to show the architect or the mechanical or the plumbing, you know, all their models. So I would set this work set up, hit OK, and then yeah, you can make that the active work set. There you go. Now it'll say new Revit links. Then from here, go into your link, select the architect, leave it at internal origin. Okay, now let's talk about this work set. Let's specify it. Hit open, and there you go. So these are the work set that architect has created, and they put all of their designs element into these work sets. I guess I'll elaborate more into work sets in the next video, but for this one, all you have to understand is that these are basically layers, and if you can turn off a section of the layers that you know you never need, then this is a great spot to do it, because then you just got to do it once. You don't have to turn it off in every single view. So for example, flows, like I hardly ever use flows, so we can go ahead and close this. So now when I load the project, everything on the flows work sets won't turn on, nor can I access it. But the downside is that if for some reason the drafter was having a bad day and put like a couple walls and a door on the flows work set, well, I won't be able to see it because it's permanently closed. So I'll have to go back into the Manage tab, open the work set, which reloads the project, and it's kind of annoying. So I've been leaving it open recently just because people have been a little messy. You can close it if you want, but I'm going to leave it open, and then I'm going to hit OK to go to the next window. All right, so there you go. The architect model has now been brought in. You can see that it's got all the background listed in here. So one important thing, the minute you bring in a link, you'll want to go ahead and click on it and pin it. Because if you don't pin it, somebody can move the link around and then everything just gets messed up. So click pin, and now if you click on it, you should not be able to drag it anywhere. Okay, so after you brought in the architect plane and you pinned it, go up here to edit type, and you want to check room bounding. That way all the rooms, it'll come into your model and you can tag them. So click that. Here you can fix the work set if you put it on the wrong work set. So let's say you brought it in under power for some reason, you can put it back on your Revit work set. Reference type overlay, like I said before, it's only useful to go attachment if you want these links to go along to someone else. Actually, what's useful, a useful way to use attachment is if you have like an old electrical project. I'm talking just an electrical because that's what I am. So an old electrical project that you want to bring in as reference, and anyone that sees the electrical model, you want to show that existing work. That's the point where you want to throw in the attachment link instead of an overlay link. Okay, and then under phase mapping, you just want to match the phases from the architect to electrical. You don't want like their new work to show up as your existing work or something. So here's where you do all the adjustments for that. So hit OK. There you go. Now the architect model is linked in. We'll do mechanical or something as another example. So I go ahead and click mechanical. I'm just going to click open because I want everything to show up. And it should load right in. All right, so it looks like mechanical model came in, but there's nothing in this view. So in order to find it, I generally do a hide and unhide method. So what that means is I would click on the view that's most prominent, and I know that's architect. So I can go ahead and hide in view by right-clicking, hide in view, and then now I can kind of see little specks of stuff from the mechanical drawings. So if you click that, you can see over here that it says TED mechanical. So there's your mechanical model. If I undo here, now I kind of remember where it was. All right, so here's the architect model, here's the mechanical model, and yeah, that looks reasonable. It's not like running through a wall or anything. So this looks like it's in the right spot. I'm going to head and pin it. For this one, I'm not going to really do room bounding because they're not defining any rooms, but I will check to make sure it's on the right work set, the right reference type, and just double check the phase mapping. So there you go. That's how you bring in a Revit model. Make sure it's on the right work set, you pin it, you define the room bounding on the architect side, you double check to make sure it's on overlay and not attachment, or attachment if you need to, and check the phasing, make sure that the phasing lines up. Actually, that's a good thing to go over. Let's do phasing real quick. So under Manage tab, you can see that there's a phasing window. If you click on that, you'll want to make sure that your phases that you have in your model lines up with the architect's phases. So if you're missing something, like let's say there was DP3 afterward, or DP4, you can click Insert After. Make sure you type that to be exactly the same as the architect phase. So here, let's say there was DP4. I'm going to type DP4 and then hit OK. Then you want to go ahead and click on the architect's link again, hit Edit Type, Phase Mapping, and you know, we have DP4, but obviously they don't have DP4 yet. But if they did, then it would line up. Okay, so anyways, I'm going to remove this so that it doesn't get confusing. Oh yeah, to remove phases, you basically have to just combine with previous. There's not really a way to just yank it out, because if you drew something in phase DP4, they'll want to lump it together with some kind of phase. So it's always combined with previous phase. Okay, so now let's move on to AutoCAD drawings. Usually if I ever have to bring in an AutoCAD drawing, it's because it's an existing floor plan, or it's like single line diagrams, wiring diagrams, risers, stuff like that. These CAD files are always shown in a drafting view. So up here in view, we can go and create a drafting view. Drafting view, we'll call this SKE or something, SKE01. I think that was the sketch. And usually I leave the scale at 12:1, then hit OK. You can see it's a blank slate. All right, so we're going to come up here to the Insert tab, and then there's two options here. You can either link a CAD file, or you can import a CAD file. So there's two ways to bring a CAD file in. You can either link it in, or you can import it. Linking the file basically allows you to update the file inside of Revit by adjusting the CAD file. So you can go to your CAD file, make changes to it, hit save, then come into Revit, hit reload, and it'll update that single line diagram. When you import a CAD file, it brings the entire CAD file into Revit, and there is no link to that external file anymore. If you make changes on the external file, you'll have to re-import and overwrite the file that's already inside of Revit. So depending on your use cases, you can choose one or the other. Let's do an example of both. We're going to link the CAD file. So go in here, click on CAD, click on your drawing. Then over here under colors, I generally like to go black and white, because if you preserve it yellow on white, it's really hard to see. Under layers, you want to just click visible, or you can specify if you know exactly which one you want. But I generally pretty up the CAD file first. So I go to CAD file, I turn off the layers I don't want, hit save, and then now in here I just hit visible. So I click visible, import units. You can auto detect, and I uncheck this, correct lines that are slightly off axis. If you have a site plan that the line is like it said, slightly off axis, you don't want it to try to correct it. So I uncheck that to maintain accuracy. So for positioning, again, I just leave it at origin to origin and then hit open. It looks like nothing came in, but you're probably just not looking at it. So I always double click the mouse scroll button to like center the view onto the wherever the drawing is. So if you just double click that, you'll see that it snaps to the view extents. There's your single line diagram. There's a lot of stuff that you can do to this CAD file, such as changing line widths, turning things on and off and everything, but I think I'll break that out into a separate video, otherwise this will be really long. So just real quick, I have the CAD file open, and let's say I want to stretch this line out, this far. Okay, then I'm going to head and save this. So now that I have the change to the AutoCAD side, under manage links, click on CAD format, click on this CAD file, then hit reload. Once you hit reload, you can see, you can't quite see it, but you'll hit OK, and you kind of saw that it stretched itself down. If you're more comfortable making changes on CAD side, this is a great option for you. So now let's go ahead and make another drafting view. I'm going to show you what happens when you import a CAD file. So SLD import. Okay, we're going to do something similar. It's going to go to insert. Then over here, we're going to import the CAD file. And then click on this file, black and white, visible, and hit open. Okay, so again, you can't see it. Double click the scroll wheel, and now you can. So now with the import, you get a little bit more flexibility to change things inside of Revit. So how you do that is you click on the single line, and then over here you can do partial or full explode. So I mean, you can start with a partial explode, you can always fully explode it later, but once you explode it, you can see that you can change things on the single line diagram directly inside of Revit. So now each one of these is a separate entity. So I can grab this line and I can change it right here. You can see that this run now is adjustable. Same thing here. If I grab this entire building, I can move it down like that. I can also easily break things. But this won't have any effect on the CAD file that's sitting in the project folder. If you changed anything on that CAD file, it won't affect this. So this is a great way to import your single line diagram and then never have to touch CAD again. So some people like it this way, some people like to adjust it on the CAD side and update this. It depends on how you want to work. So that should get you comfortable with bringing in CAD files, either import or linked, and you decide depending on your needs. Okay, so let's move on to Keynotes. Keynotes are sheet notes. They're basically the same thing. And essentially you put like a little number in a pentagon or hexagon. Yeah, you put a number in a hexagon on a drawing, and that number will reference a sheet note that's kind of sitting on the side of your drawing. All right, so where you want to start is to go into, make a Keynote folder first, then open that up, create a blank notepad file, then save into that folder. So here I'm going to hit save as, and we'll call it elect Keynotes. Okay, so we'll hit save. Then over here we can start formatting the keynotes. So Revit reads a specific format, and you'll have to follow this format, otherwise your keynotes won't show up in the software. All right, so to start, you basically need a defining initial. So you can start with like a P and then press tab, then type out the description for that letter. So this will be power. Then you can press enter, do another one like L for lighting, S for system, and ST or site. Yeah, ST for site. So you can use, I believe you can use as many letters as you really want to, but the problem with using multiple letters is that it starts coming out of the keynote symbol. So after you've defined your categories, press enter twice, then you can start typing in your notes. So it's always the letter plus a number, then tab, then type your note. After you're done with your note, press tab, then a closing initial, so P. So you can do that a couple times if you want to, and then move on to the next category. Press enter so that you have a space, and you can do L1, note, tab, or not P, L. You have to make sure that the letters line up in the beginning and the end. So L2, note, L. You can skip it actually if you wanted to. You don't have to use sequential numbers. You can use 4, note, L. Sometimes what I'll do is, like, if I have something that I know will need a couple numbers, I'll actually skip ahead to like L20 or something, and then everything from L1 to L19 will be for a certain category of notes. So you could do that. You also don't have to define all the other letters and numbers yet, but it's always nice to, because then what you can do is put the keynote on first and then come over here to the notepad and update your notes. Okay, so this is the general format that you'll want to use to set up your keynotes. We're going to go ahead and hit save, and then flip over to the Revit model. Then over here under annotate on the Revit side, go to under keynote settings, and we're going to browse. Click on that, hit open, and it'll say table reloaded successfully. Okay, now over here under keynote settings, you can do relative settings so that if it moves, the project folder will help update where the location is. Under numbering methods, there's two ways to do it. It's either by keynote and by sheet. The difference is that the keynote method will keep the exact number that you define on your keynote notepad. So if you put a note on the drawing that says like L20, it'll stay L20 no matter which sheet you put it on. L20 will be universal across the project. So that's great, like if you had a specific note and you mentally remembered what that note is, then every time you come to a new location, you're like, oh, I need an L20 here. So it's good to keep track of. It's also easier on the contractor who's reading it, and if they've been on the project a while, they'll know that L20 specifically means something in one thing. If you go by sheet, what it does is, let's say L20 is the one and only note on a sheet, it'll renumber that to just be note 1. So it's cleaner in a way, so that all the sheets just have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sequentially, but sometimes you may not know like what the underlying note is. You'll have to always go up to the corner to read your note. So there's pros and cons to each one. So it looks neater by sheet, but it's also harder to use by sheets. I personally always use by keynote because it's easier for me to design. I can remember the notes, and the contractors generally like it, but it just doesn't look very nice. So I'm going to leave it by keynote and hit OK. So now you have the notepad set up. We're going to go onto the floor plan to place a couple keynotes. I'm going to use my level 1 floor plan, for example. So we'll open it up, we'll put it on the sheet here, and then we're going to need to put the keynotes on the floor plan. So we're going to zoom in here, double click to activate it, and now I should be able to tab. You can click on these items to tag them. So over here you're going to use user keynotes, so click on that. Then you can define if you want, leader or free end. I turn the leaders off. So this table, we're just going to plop a random keynote on here. We'll say P2. Hit OK. You can see that it shows P2. We'll do another one here, like that. Now that we have it on the floor plan, we're going to go ahead and make sure that we have a legend that shows all the sheet notes by sheet. So to do that, I'm going to go over here to Legends, right click, New Keynote Legend. So yeah, we'll leave it at Keynote Legend. We want the value and the text, right. Then over here under Filter, we want to click Filter by Sheet. That way only the ones that are applicable on that sheet will show up. Otherwise you'll have every single note on every single sheet, which could get overwhelming. So under sorting, we want ascending, right? We don't want to itemize every instance. One note is enough. Formatting, you can tweak that as you want to. Appearance, yeah, you can change all kinds of stuff if you want to. But the important bits are right here. Okay, so now we're going to close out the legend. Come over here to our sheet, Keynote Legend, and yeah, there you go. So you see that there's only P2 and S1 because that's all I placed over here. So now if I double click on this view, go over here, user keynote, and I add something else, say like L20 or something, hit OK. So there's L20. Now if you scroll over here, you'll see that L20 now is in the keynote legend. So this is a great way to make sure all your notes are in one spot, makes your floor plan a little cleaner, and it's fairly easy to manage. If you want to adjust the notes, open your notepad. So go over here to L20 and say, note as needed or something. We'll hit save. Then go over here to keynotes, keynote setting, hit reload, and you'll see that this has now updated to note as needed. So that's how you set up keynotes for your project, and it's a great way to organize all your notes in one spot. If you need to use them across different drawings, you don't have to copy and paste them. You just type your keynote that you want to and make sure you're showing them on the floor plan. Alright, so that's it for part 2. We showed you how to link Revit models from other disciplines, how to import or link CAD files, and how to set up your keynotes and how to use them. Go practice these skills. You may have to do it a couple of times for you to remember. Take some notes, remember, because you don't do these very often. In part 3, I promise I'll dive a little more into the electrical stuff that you're probably here for. I wanted to build a good foundation so that anyone that's just jumping in will have somewhat of a good footing before we start going into the complicated stuff. Till next time, have a good one. Bye.